Just Breathe Live is a YouTube live stream where youth ministry has a say. Explore faith, spirituality, and life purpose as never before. And above all, bring your authentic self and just breathe.
Welcome to Just Breathe Live. Thank you for joining us today. My name is Shannon Harper. I am only half of your usual co-host duo. Eric Bliss is still on sabbatical. We're wishing him all the relaxation and joy that comes with this wonderful time of our careers when we get to take a whole 3 months off. And so Eric will be back with us in January. But for now, you are stuck with me. I'm coming to you from Dayton, Ohio. My pronouns are she, her. And this is Just Breathe Live. So if this is your first time joining us, welcome. We are so happy you're here. If you're returning because you listened or saw something that you really loved, thank you for coming back. Please like and follow us on Instagram and wherever you're getting your podcasts, or if you're watching us on YouTube. We're all over the place, evidently. Make sure you're liking and following us so you can keep up on what we're doing. We are a Unitarian Universalist podcast and live stream, which means that we often talk about Unitarian Universalism. And if you would like to know more about Unitarian Universalism, you can go to uua.org and learn all the wonderful things about this liberal faith that we practice. Often our guests are Unitarian Universalists, or in the Unitarian Universalist world, we call those, sometimes people are adjacent to us as well. So welcome to everyone. Let's see. We usually start, so this is the part that Eric normally does. Eric normally does the beginning breathing, because we are a podcast called Just Breathe Live, which means that we are really hoping that this is a time in your day when you're listening to us, when you can relax and you can be intentional and you can listen and you can breathe. So we like to do a little practice in the very beginning where we just breathe together. And Eric usually does 3 breaths. So I'm going to follow his lead, and I'm going to ask you to breathe with me. So get comfortable in your seat, or if you're laying down. I wish I was laying down. I'm not. But get comfortable wherever you are. Maybe you're in the car. You don't want to get too comfortable, but stay alert. And just take a moment and breathe with me. One last time. I feel relaxed. And now I am ready to introduce you to our fantastic guest. Today we have joining us Marissa Gutiérrez Vicario. Vicario. Okay. Yes, I'm so sorry. I'm always worried that I'm going to mess up somebody's name, and then I do it, and then I admit that I do it, and I talk about it for a couple seconds afterwards. So there we are. Marissa, thank you for joining us. Marissa is with ARTE, and that's how you pronounce that, correct? ARTE, which stands for Art and Resistance Through Education. Yes, awesome. Welcome. Hello, how are you?
Hello, so good to see you, to be in the space with you, and thank you so much for having me.
Yes. So we're going to get into talking about ARTE and how you started it, how you founded it, what you're up to, what you're doing. But we also like to start our interviews with a check-in. Normally Bliss and I start the check-in, but since he's not here, we're just going to do it together. And so our check-in question today, it's cold outside. You were in New York, right?
So, yeah.
I'm in Dayton, Ohio. We're both talking about how it's chilly. I've seen some Facebook posts from friends who are like, oh, they're in the South and it's like really cold. So I think maybe we're all dealing with that. So I'm already like missing the warmth and the outdoors and the plant life. And I am a huge plant fan myself. You said you were plant sitting before we started?
Yes.
All right. Yeah. So let's do a plant check-in. What's your favorite plant? Any living greenery? Like let's say it has to be a plant, could be a tree, could be a flower, could be a house plant. But what's your favorite plant and why?
Should I go first?
Yes, you go first.
So I started being a little bit more thoughtful, and my grandfather was like to garden and had like his own, my brother gardens and stuff like that. I'm not particularly great, but I do love snake plants because they're virtually indestructible.
Yes, they are.
Real hard to kill. So I feel like I like that for myself, and I also like the idea of like, if I could be a plant, I'd like to be one that was virtually indestructible.
That's good. I would almost like, I was almost thinking the opposite, in that like I want to be this delicate, like fern that takes a lot of attention and a lot of care. That's a whole nother check-in, right? Like what plant would you be if you could be a plant? But my favorite plant, I have over 100 houseplants, which is ridiculous.
Wow.
I know you might, I don't know, sometimes you can see them in my background, but it's a little ridiculous. Like the quarantine in 2020 was a year, right, for a lot of us to start collecting plants. And as I do when I get into anything, I go all in. You got to go all in or nothing. Right now my favorite plant is actually behind me. Would you like to see it?
Yes, please.
I can show it to you. And I'll describe it for those of you listening. So you can't probably see the leaves. So the leaves are like, I can't remember what kind of plant it is, but the point of the plant is that it has these stems that look like they're you probably can't even see it online, but they look like they're striped, or like they're like tiger stripes or something. They have this like animal print kind of thing to it, and I absolutely love it. And it is one of those plants that can very easily die. So I'm like, I spray it every day, and I tend to put a lot of intention into this plant, right? So there are some, I have snake plants, and I can just like let those go. ZZ plants are like plants that you can just basically, they don't need a lot of light, they don't need a lot of water, they're just great. I have a lot of those plants, but the ones that like require me to have like this intentional, almost like spiritual practice about taking care of them, I really like that about those plants. It's like a challenge, right?
Yeah, they need your care, they need your love, like.
That's right. That's right. I just want to be needed. All right. Well, thank you for checking in. So let's get into, I didn't read your bio out loud, but I usually do. So I'm going to read the bio that you sent us. Marissa is the founder and executive director of Art and Resistance Through Education, ARTE. As a committed human rights and peace-building activist, artist, educator, and advocate for youth, Marissa launched ARTE in 2013 to help young people amplify their voices and organize for human rights change in their communities through the visual arts. Currently, Marissa is an artist in residence at the Initiative for a Just Society at the Center for Contemporary Critical Thought at Columbia University. Marissa also serves as an adjunct lecturer at the City College of New York in the Art and Education departments, and is currently a UU The Vote Fellow. So that's a lot, and that's just a little bit of I mean, if you go onto the ARTE website, you can actually read your full bio, and there's a lot that you've been up to.
It's a mouthful. Like it's a lot of letters. No, thanks for reading that and honoring that.
So tell us about ARTE. Tell us about your group.
I would love to. So ARTE, Art and Resistance Through Education, we're New York based, so we're a grassroots organization. And as you mentioned, we work with young people, we work to amplify their voices. And I always say that, like, not give, because people have voices, and so young people have like incredible voices, but to really amplify it for human rights change through the visual arts. So we're looking at murals, we're looking at collaging, we're looking at sometimes sculpture, like things, visual arts, and not that we're opposed to other types of art. we love music, but we wanted to be able to focus and do something well, right? And do, like, to narrow our approach a little bit. So so we work with young people, in public schools, with community organizations, folks who are incarcerated, and also adult allies, so teachers, educators, activists who want to support youth communities, but also just kind of want to learn artivism, which we'll talk about in a second, but because this is for everyone. So our priority is young folks and raising young people's voices, and also we know that it takes a lot of people to build this community as well and support young people in the work that they're doing.
Yes, yes. Oh my gosh, it does. And I think it's important for us to note, for all of you listening or watching, like, this podcast is for youth and young adults. And normally we have youth and young adults who are interviewing, although right now it's just been hard for us to work out timing and everything for that. So Marissa's organization, you actually have a lot of youth and young adults. I've been on your website, which is, first of all, fantastic. It's amazing. Like, I don't know who made your website, but they deserve like serious kudos, because it's a beautiful and informative website. It's well designed, which is what you would, I guess, expect from an arts organization.
Not always, but thank you for saying that.
Right. No, I highly recommend people going to it. And what is it? We're gonna put it in the show notes, the link to the website.
Yeah, I can give you the address too. And thank you. I do want to say, like, this was a labor of love from many different people, you know, and went through several different iterations. And if I'm being honest, like, I have very little to do with it. I work with amazing people who do. Again, even from we had a website that was different from it. Everything is a process, right? And everything comes, and so I'm really grateful for all the folks. There's a lot of people to name with that website. But it is www.arte, ARTE, and the word justice.org. So artejustice.org.
Right. Okay. And we'll drop that link in the show notes too. But yeah, everybody should check out the website. Not only is it well done, but it's incredibly informative. But I was on there looking at the people who are involved, and you have a lot of young people involved. So not only are you working with young people, but you also have, like, it looks like you have a board that is like the junior board that has young people on it. And I want to talk about that a little bit later. I want to get into that. But I just want to really point out to people that we are mindful and realize that you're listening to two adults talk about youth, talking about, you know, empowering youth and working with youth, and how important that is, and how important it is to have their voices in the room when we're talking about that, and recognizing that that is not something that is always possible, you know, to do. So today you have us, but maybe we will invite you back and invite you back with some of the young people that you're working with. That would be fantastic too. So
that would be great. And I can talk about a program that we're working on right now with some awesome young folks who I think might be excited about that. So
awesome.
Thank you.
Very cool. Okay, so you mentioned the word artivist. What is an artivist?
What is an artivist? Yeah. So, and again, people have different definitions. This is not the, and also as an artivist, there's not one definition that's set in stone, because we're artivists, right? Like, things change, and you know, right? Can you imagine if it was just one definition? But essentially looking at someone who is an artist, activist, and uses, you know, different types of art and different types of mediums. Again, in our case, it's visual art and visual mediums, but to bring about social change, to talk about social change, to raise awareness, to bring action, to bring change in the world through these different artistic mediums, you know, whether it's creation and it's exposure, and just like reflection, right? There's like not everyone enters the artistic process in different ways. So I want to honor that too. And also I think and I'll talk a little bit more about that, but in our program too, there's a lot of folks who don't identify as artists, but they are doing art, and you know, or there's activists who don't identify as activists, like, but are doing this work. So I also know that, like, identities can shift in that way, and people can reclaim them or not, but to at least to have this framework that we can use, right?
Yeah, that's interesting what you say about, like, being an artist or doing art, but not considering themselves an artist, or being, you know, somebody who works for justice in different ways, but not necessarily identifying as that. I think that also, like, applies to ministry. Sometimes I will talk to people where I'm like, oh, what you're doing is a ministry. And they're like, oh, well, I've never thought about myself as that, or, you know. And so there is something about a naming, right? Of a like saying, no, this is the value that you have in the world. And this is how I see you. And so I love that you're working with all of those different ways of people, like, come into art. And so like, what are you were the founder of this. Are you co-founder or founder?
I mean, I kind of think I co-founded with a lot of people, but
Yeah.
but I was,
but it was your idea. It was
yeah.
it was your idea.
Yeah.
So how early did you consider yourself an artivist? Like, what age did you consider yourself an artivist?
So if I'm being honest, and maybe this is helpful for young people who are trying to figure out how to do things and make their ideas happen. I probably was in high school when I started, I started doing activisty things very young, and but of course started doing it most when I would be like joined UU and became a U and did YRU and stuff like that. But for me, yeah, in high school, I was really interested in like this intersection. I felt like I wasn't complete without art and social justice, and so yeah, when I would say in high school, and then through college I did like artivism. I don't even know if we used that word back in the day.
Right.
But yeah, so and then in the most recent, again, this has always existed, but I think we're in a point in time where people are embracing this work a little, this name a little bit more, and you're seen in different places. So yeah, I think as a young person, as a teenager, that's when I truly started, okay, I can do this. This is important to me. I also, a quick background is I'm Mexican, US American Mexican, grew up in Southern California, and for me, I made piñatas growing up, right? So like that was really important for me to like use my hands and make art, and then figure out ways, how can I use my art to think about the things that I care about the most.
Yes. Yeah, I got into art when I was in high school as well. And I ended up being in art. Like I'm studying art a lot in college, I guess. But again, I was one of those people who was like, oh, I'm not an artist because those people over there are artists. That's where the real talent is. I just like to make things, right? But yeah, that connection between the passions that we love, and the things that the change that we want to see in the world, like those two connections is just, it's a beautiful connection. What, like when you back in 2013 when you founded Arte, what was your inspiration? What did you see that needed to happen, or what were the what do I want to say, the holes that you were filling with Arte?
So back in that time period, and again, so many other organizations have done this work, and in different ways. But I started working with young people in Brooklyn, in New York, and it was smaller organizations who were doing human rights work and social justice curriculum. And again, it feels like a lifetime, but things have changed since then a lot. But I saw young people cared about issues, but I felt like the art aspect was missing, like in bringing that to the table. So this idea that art can help people understand humanity a little bit more, their own humanity, other people's humanity, people, including myself, understand things a little bit better when it has this human connection, this connectivity. So brought in art, to help students think a little bit more about especially issues that were happening abroad, and then thinking about like, oh, well, this actually happens in our own backyards, and let's think about how art, film, especially at the time, can be used to help young people make those connections. And then also we used art as a way to process, right? So the idea, like, especially, I don't want to make assumptions, but in this country, a lot of young people we work with do experience human rights violations, especially as young people of color. So we wanted also to use art as a way of processing, not therapy, because that's a different process, but like at least reflect and think and channel their creativity as a way of deepening their understanding of particular issues.
And so you started in Brooklyn and you just grew from there. Like, what was it like? What was it like in the beginning? The first days?
It's hard, everything, and we're still relatively grassroots, and we're still, building and things like that. But I think the young people we work with get it, what I mean? But I think sometimes I think what's hard is when there's a disconnect with maybe adults or like even funders or things like that. Like, oh, well, how does this work? We don't like art is like, we should fund art. That can happen,
right.
And so right. I think that becomes challenging in terms of like, or we talk about this a lot, especially with people of color communities, like art is disproportionately funded, right? So we have to think about, like, not only are we fighting for human rights in this way, like, and thinking about mass incarceration, thinking about detention, like we're also fighting for the arts as well, right? So that becomes challenging because they're it's double work in many ways, you know what I mean? In terms of, and again, it's like, in the grand scheme of things, in relative, like, this is a joy and blessing to do this work, and also to acknowledge the challenges that we do face, right? So
Sure. Yeah. So when we're talking about art, what is your like elevator speech for why art and justice? Why are they connected?
yeah, I say a lot to people. I'm very proud of this. I say a lot, this idea that, like, art manifests hope, and then hope manifests justice, right? So you need to make these connections, like that. I think of that a lot in terms of, and I'm sure many of folks who might be listening right now or watching, you know, there's so many incredible activists who, you know, talk about building a new world. A lot of abolitionists who've been doing this incredible work. So this idea that we can use art and creativity to reimagine a new world. So you know, again, this is not new. But I think this is not new, but I think a lot of folks in this work are like, it's really resonating with them and their communities, right? So that's something we're trying to share with students in terms of, like, well, you know, what would it be if we had a world without prisons? You know, I know for many people that's very scary, but, like, you know, let's use art to pull that away and think about that. So, you know, following a lot of folks who are doing that abolitionist work. Yeah, so that's kind of, that wasn't much of an elevator speech. That was a horrible elevator speech, but I hope that was.
No, it's good. It's really good. I mean, you know, for me, art makes ideas accessible, right? So it's like visual art, but also, you know, poetry. I was given a manuscript to read of a poet recently, and I was like, oh my gosh, like the poems are making me think about things that I had never thought about, you know, in other ways. Art, you know, visual art does the same thing. And I love what you said about it like giving us this picture of what it could be. Like, what could it be like if we didn't have these systems of oppression? Or what could it be like if, you know, if liberation was, you know, a thing that was tangible to everyone, right? And I just love it. I mean, it's beautiful, but it's also it fulfills a human need that we have to create things. Like, we've been creating things from, you know, the beginning of time, even like very so I'm a potter myself, and I love pottery because there's something really beautiful about creating something that will be utilized, right? That doesn't just hang on a wall, but people will interact with. Like, they will hold in their hands, or they will touch to their lips, or, you know, they will use. And so, but even in making those things, like those really like basic, like I'm making a mug, we want to decorate it. We want to put ourselves into it, put our ideas into it. And even like in the most basic of things, like, we want to push a thought or an idea and get that out there. We can do that with art. And I love that. And I love that you're doing it on such a large scale too, with some of the things you're working on. So, like, tell me about some of the projects that ARTE has done in the community.
Yeah, I also love that you're a potter. Thank you for sharing that. I think I imagine, I don't know if everyone can see this, but in the background, I think maybe it's some of your work.
Yes, you can see. Yeah, that's one of the very first chalices I ever made.
It's beautiful. Yeah, no, I think so prior to the pandemic, and we're getting back to it, but we did like a few murals, and our murals are, you know, we do murals, but it's not just murals. Like, I know there's many other organizations that do murals and very well and are inspirations to us for sure. So for us, it is about murals, but it's also about, like I said, like smaller projects. There's also places we can't do murals, you know, and you know, incarcerated spaces. Other people do it. We decide not to, and we do other kinds of art, which is, I think all of it is needed in some way. But during the pandemic, and now I'm very proud of this, we launched a program called Youth Voices Lead. And we're actually recruiting for our next, I can give information about that, our next cohort. So we started it, and it was just, we wanted to use an opportunity to think, okay, like, you know, young people always process and create art, and we want to support that. But, the one thing that might be missing a little bit is this training component, right? So like, how do we use art to train young people to become activists and artivists and gain skills around advocacy and organizing and leadership? So we launched it. It was a virtual program, and then we kind of did a mini hybrid. And I think we're in the middle of a program right now, which is all virtual, and then we'll probably go. So we've been trying to balance it based on the needs of people too, because the pandemic has shifted in many different ways, right? Like, it's still not over, and there's still people, it's transformed, and we're learning to live with it in different ways. So we want our program to be, to adapt in those ways as well, right? So over the course of several weeks, and sometimes months, students, depending on which program, like students will come together, they'll learn about different topics, especially all under this umbrella of racial justice. And they'll make art, they'll learn about artivists, they'll have discussions, they'll like think about actions, and then part of it is like this culminating community project, right? So they come together, we invite people to come and see their work. So that's been really fruitful, and like the students have been amazing. And also it's allowed us to build our junior board, which we had talked about, like, so this idea that like we have a senior board, but also of adults. So our idea was like, it's not perfect in the sense that we're still learning how to best support young people. But they're amazing. Like, it's an amazing process. We've been learning a lot, and it's the idea, we say youth voices lead. So what does that actually look like, right? Instead of just a name, like what does that actually feel like and look like? And and again, like I said, it's not perfect. There's challenges, of course, because young people have a lot of stuff on their plates, and a lot of different challenges, right? So yeah, no, it's been great in that sense that like, what does it mean to have young people create workshops and lead themselves as opposed to other generations?
Okay, well, let's get into the board and the structure, because I'm always interested in talking to someone who is, running an organization for young people, where the young people have leadership, there is a leadership aspect to people being involved. So you were talking about it's not perfect. I would love to know, like, what are the like, I know I can name that from like experiences that I've had. But like, what are the struggles that are sometimes, inherent in, working with young leaders, or having an organization that is designed for young leaders?
Yeah, and just to be clear, when imperfections, like, it's not on the young people,
Right.
it's just like our structures and things like that.
Sure.
I mean, I think we're learning, like, what, when we say leadership, well, what does that look like, right? You know what I mean? Like, we're a nonprofit organization, right? So, legally, like, who gets to make the decisions, right? Like, who gets, like, and decisions don't always, like, there are different ways people can make decisions and have leadership, but like, we're learning, I think, through like, what does that look like? What is that process? I think the young people in our junior board, and who are amazing, I hope one day can speak for themselves. They're really interested in programs and projects, and like, okay, so like, we're a group of really stellar young people. Like, what does it mean for us to create something for other young people? What does it mean to use social media? I've learned this a lot from some of the members of the board. Like, what does it mean to make social media that's not just for likes, right? But it's actually having impact. That was a huge question. Like, I don't want to just post things because it's cool. I want to post things because it'll have an impact. So, so I'm learning about that through them. And then again, like, I think there's also challenges with ego in myself, like, okay, like, you get to do this and you lead this. Okay. Like, that's, and it's beautiful, because I think there's healthy ways to do it. Like, from experience, I can share that, but it's like, having to take a step back and say, like, I have to learn from you, or I get to learn from you. That's not easy, right? So
yeah, it's like a spiritual practice. Honestly, it's a spiritual practice of letting go.
Yeah.
Of like letting go of the vision. And I mean, this applies to working with anyone, right? Being a collaborative, in collaborative partnership with anyone, regardless of age. But the letting go and recognizing that, that my vision is not the only one, is hard. And especially because sometimes, the vision that people bring to me, I'm like, that's like way outside of the. And yet what I found is that when I can go with it, when I can, like, see the possibilities in it, the most amazing things happen, especially when I work with young people, right? Because they see the world in a different way than I do. And I experience, a little bit of the world through them, with that. So I appreciate that all the time, working with young leaders and their vision. And I think, and I know for me, I know one of the biggest things, and I think you kind of touched on this a little bit, is like, time. It's that young people are so busy, doing all the things. There's a lot of things going on in their worlds. And so, making the time and having the time to connect and to be together. So yeah, I know that's one of the issues that I experience.
Yeah, I was just going to add to that, if I may, like, some of the young people on our board right now, they're applying for college, and like that's huge. It's a huge life-changing event for many, not all, but many young people, right? So it's just, yeah, how do you how do you balance all that, like that? I think the young people we work with do prioritize this work that we do together, but also I would understand if they didn't, because there's a lot of other priorities they have, and being there for families and jobs and grades, like, and again, obviously, like, adults, it's hard being an adult too. I'm not trying to downplay that either, but
Right.
Also I think, we exist in a world where young people are not always given the power they need, right? So it's just like how do you navigate a world where people tell you that you don't have any power, right? That's very frustrating. That's very challenging. So.
Oh yes.
Yeah.
Which I think is the beauty of the work that you do, because it feels like that's what you're saying is like, here, let's here is a way to amplify, what you're thinking and what you're doing. So I love that.
Yeah.
I do think it's interesting because the word liminal is being used a lot now. It's like it was a cool word, and now it's become the word that like everybody's using, this idea of liminal space or liminal time, the in-between time. Maybe it's just in my circles. It might be in my circles. It might be me. It might be me using the word. I do use the word a lot. People who know my work, like outside of this podcast, know that I do use this word a lot. In any case, this idea of being in between space is like kind of the time we're in right now. Like, we're not in a pandemic, like we're not in the heart of a pandemic, but yet we're not back to like where we were before the pandemic, and we're probably not going to go back to that place, but we're not sure where we're headed, that kind of thing. But that's literally what, some people live in that place, especially when you're young, right? So it's that always transitioning between middle school to high school to whatever's going to happen for you outside of high school. Sometimes it's for college, sometimes it's transitioning into the workforce, or whatever you're doing, really working with those people. But I think that that's also where this amazing creativity comes, because you're not like stationary, you're not like set in your, like me, my 48-year-old. Oh, did I say that on the podcast? My older viewpoint. I don't usually try to admit that to out loud, but in any case, being in that place kind of also allows for more creativity. So it's wonderful.
It's fantastic.
So I am, let's see, I'm gonna look at my notes because I want to make sure there was some things that I was thinking, I know. Okay, so you were talking about some projects that you've done. What are like give me an example of one very specific project, that like a community project that was done.
Yeah, last spring, I guess now, we worked in collaboration with the Boys Club of New York. So we and an artist named Christy McCarthy, and did a project where a group of folks who identify as young men, they came together, they learned about different gender justice activists and women identified activists, and yeah, they put together this amazing mural. So they did a mural at their clubhouse, which is really cool. One of the images, the main image on that particular mural, I can send you a picture or two if you'd like to see, but it was focused on Marielle Franco, so Brazilian activist who was assassinated. So for them, it was a way of honoring her work, but also thinking about gender justice and thinking about the roles of the different identities play in making that change and making the world more safe for everyone, you know, and thinking about thinking about identities and privilege, and also how to creatively envision a more safe and just world. So it's actually a picture of Marielle Franco as a little girl, and like, you know, it's that old saying, like, they tried to bury us, but they thought we were, or they tried to bury us, but they didn't know that we
Or seeds.
Yes.
Yes.
I think about it all the
love it.
time. I'm like, I was losing the words, but it's beautiful and it's beautifully done.
Yes.
And then also the idea that like most, if not all, of our pieces are work with young people choose the images themselves and create it themselves.
Mhm.
So that is very special to me. Like they'll sometimes work with artists or partner with artists, but essentially it's their work, because we want
Mhm.
young people to have ownership over it, and something that they'll see in their usually they'll see in their community. So why wouldn't it be something that they have created?
Yes.
And also honoring that, like, like I said, not everyone who starts in our projects are artists, or have, and again, for a lot of different reasons, haven't received formal training. So I think there's also something special about creating artwork in community spaces where people of all different artistic abilities can feel like they can contribute to something.
Mm. So where do you get the inspiration for your, like, for the who you're working with, who you're reaching out to? Like what how does that come about?
I mean, I think a lot of our work, like, again, for many different reasons, obviously we support all communities, and we have found that, again, we are working predominantly with young people of color because of the need, right? And the need and the focus of the issues. So, you know, a lot of our team members, a lot of our group, like young people, again, like you mentioned, young people of color, young people residing in New York, often, not all. You know, a lot of folks who are artists in some ways, and you know, or visual artists, but there's also like some performing artists, or like, you know, folks who have studied theater. You know, also allies who want to support their young people, like, so teachers, like I said, guidance counselors, principals sometimes, and then, you know, also like community partners, like who have access to resources or spaces that but understand what we were trying to do in our cause. And and then also folks who want to, I won't say too much, like, but like who want to continue to work with folks on the inside or incarcerated populations, and also want to dismantle those systems too. So it's like
Mhm.
people who are very you know, like understand the need, but also understand, like, this is not what we don't want to be, you know, continuing to do art in places. We want people to be free too. So period. Actually, we want people to be free, period, right? So
Period.
it's
Yes. Yes.
so but that is, not everyone is aligned with that, right? So it's just like trying to understand, trying to be with people who understand, or have a willingness to understand and want to grow and want to learn. I think those are the people that we are thinking about, like, people who want to learn. And even if, you know, you're coming and, you know, you may not understand something, or you're like, I'm trying to also be open to that, and what that means to, like, give people a space to grow too, and to change their mind, and to understand, like, oh, this is, I didn't think that before. Now like, I'm learning this, and like, I think that's a journey that I'm on for certainly, and like, I hope
Yeah.
to give space for other people to have that space too.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's the thing about or the I don't know if I don't know if risk is the right word, but that's the unknown about working in the community, right? You know, you want to work in a community, you want to bring in the people, but that means like all the people, right? Like you don't get to pick and choose who's in the community, and people come in all different, you know, all different ways, and like you said, all different like stages of formation or understanding, or even just like knowledge about, you know, about things like it feels like that education piece of the arte is super important. I mean, that's what art is art, and like we've said, you know, art is everywhere, but that intention and the education around around the things, and then the creating and the processing, or the getting your voice out about what you think about these things. But that education feels so important to the process.
It's important, and it's a hard process, and it's not always, it doesn't go, again, I think I'm just thinking about life in general. It doesn't always go the way you want it to. And there's also folks, yeah, who are not as receptive yet, or like they're thinking, like, you know, there's a lot of things. So I guess I'm talking about an ideal process, and I'm learning about that, and being open to that myself, and being forgiving of that myself too. Because
I mean, in a way, what you're talking about is process art, right? I mean, what you're saying is that the act of doing this thing is in itself a process art, meaning that like it's not about necessarily what the end result is, but about the experience that people have, and how far you go, or how far you move within the process, and not like, are you a fully formed artist, or do you have a fully formed, perfect, you know, Rembrandt at the end of this, right? It's about the process. And I think, I mean, I've dabbled in teaching art, mostly to like elementary school kids, you know, after school programs and things like that, and community centers. And that was like the hardest thing, was that you are often, as an art teacher, you're often judged by like, what is the display look like? What did they make in the art class, right? And you're not actually like, you don't get the fact that like, yeah, but they learned how to mix like 6 colors, and they like learned what happens when you mix this thing and that thing, and how then that was like a complete waste of everything. We had to throw it all away, but they learned so much, and they experienced so much in it. And I mean, that's what you're really talking about, is that this experience that people are having in your workshops is is the art, right? 100%. Not necessarily the thing that you see at the end of or that they take home with them. I
mean, I had a student once who they were like acrylic paints, and like, you know, acrylic is expensive, and like she was just like squeezing it everywhere out of it. And I was like, no, I was like so devastated. I was like, why are you doing that? And she's like, this makes me feel better, and like she's like, I'm sorry, I just needed to do it. And this was a space where people didn't have art, or like didn't have access, and like a facility, and like things like that. So like, I get it. In that moment, I was like, no.
Oh yes.
but that was a process, and that made her feel, that also like built a sense of trust, right? So it's just like, it was so I really appreciate you on. I know people, it is a huge debate about process versus product, and I get product is important because people want to feel like a sense of like, I created this, and they want to feel good about their art, you know, but like good about good art and all that stuff. But the process, I if you were to ask me off the record,
we are being recorded, but
no, I mean, I think the process is everything, you know.
Yeah. So what are you excited about doing next? What is on the horizon?
We are excited. I'm excited. I always joke, I'm excited about moving somewhere and making piñatas and not talking to anyone again. Just kidding. Like, passing over all this. No, but I'm excited to see how young people can move up and move forward in their leadership and their passion. And concretely, we have a program coming up, and applications are open now. If you want to check it out. We have a Youth Voices Lead program. It's our second time doing this, in focus on abolition and racial justice, in partnership with the Initiative for a Just Society. So yeah, people can go to the website, artejustice.org, and then it's Youth Voices Lead, and it's open, especially open to people in New York, because it'll be probably a few hybrid sessions as well. So I'm excited to see how that will come out. I'm also excited. Every year we have a community gathering, a fundraiser, and so in February we're going to have it, and it's called Visions of Justice. Creativity rules everything around me. So we're excited about that, and like having a party, and it coincides a little bit, you know, our roots, you know, we initially started as like looking at graffiti as an organization, but there are other organizations that do it much better, and like, so we recognize that. But we're coinciding with the 50th anniversary of hip hop. So that's why we're also really excited to honor that, and this just to honor how street art and public art, how the folks of the past have created this pathway for us to like make art and use public art as a form of social protest. So that's
Yes.
part of our work as well. So I'm excited about this thing. I'm excited to just continue to support these programs and also to be able to celebrate with the people that we care about.
Yeah. So you mentioned that it's the Youth Voices lead is mostly for people who are in New York who can access attend events right there. So like that's mostly for that. So what do you what do you recommend for people who aren't there, who want to be involved, who want to either be involved with your organization or want to maybe start something like this where they are, or find something like this? What advice do you have for young people who want to be artivists? What do you do?
And I do also want to mention, especially with the support of You the Vote, we're in the process of a nationwide Youth Voices lead. So we are working to build that up a little bit more so that other young people will have access to it. So that's one thing that we're working on. Okay, like we have this, but how do we recruit? How do we put ourselves out there, right? How do we make sure people know about this? So that's something we're working on, because we want young people to know this is a place that they can come, but also like we're working on like also building networks with other folks, like you said, like because there are other organizations in California, for example, and other places. So I think I don't have concrete things because we're building that, but definitely for young folks that want to, like, we're also continuing, like, it sounds kind of funny, but like we're also trying to build up our TikTok because we know young people are in TikTok, like that's so please, please reach out to us, please build with us. Even though the pandemic was really hard, like that was one of the first times we ever had like nationwide, even international like workshops, things like that. So there's a lot of potential to build networks and things like that. So I think for us, it's like drop us a line, like reach out to us, because we also want to know the work that you're doing. Like one thing the junior board, I'll say this, the junior board also initiated this Artivists contest. They like first ever, and we finished it a month or so ago, and I think they want to bring it back again. And this was open to anyone in the country.
Okay.
So like, send us your art. Let's amplify your art. Those are also things that we're trying to do.
And so you mentioned You the Vote. You the Vote is a national campaign by the Unitarian Universalist Association through our organizing strategy team. And so you've partnered with them to. I want to make sure I get that part of it. So you've partnered with You the Vote to.
This is the first time I think ever, which is so awesome, as they had a You the Vote fellowship. And they're supporting different organizers and also Artivists, I think across the country. So they're like, our Youth Voices Lead program is sponsored by them. And like, we're really grateful that we have we're being able to build out our program a little bit more with their support. So and so I get an opportunity to like learn from other folks, you folks, and who are doing other important work, and also looking at like mobilizing communities, so that's part of the work that we're doing.
Wonderful. And we'll put a link to the You the Vote information too in our show notes so people can connect with them there. One other thing that I noticed on your website, I'm a big fan of a zine. I've already said how old I am, so it's already dating me as like, I remember being a young person and like when zines, came out, I don't know that was the beginning of the zine, but I do remember like the 90s and like zines and being very excited about them and like very excited to get them. So on your website, you actually have a whole page about the zine and encouraging people to make zines. I love that. I love that that's accessible. Like you can just go on the website and you can learn about it and you can, put out your voice in this. He's really good. If you don't know what a zine is, it's like a self-published, self-made. I don't. How would you describe a zine? It's like
like a magazine booklet, like I think like it comes from like Fan magazine, I think is what it came. And but this idea, like you said, it's self-published. You can make them as many as you want. Like
they're like photocopied. Like you write it, you do it, and then you photocopy it, and you like fold it or
put it
staple it or whatever together. They're fantastic.
They are, and it's interesting. I don't even know how we and we actually just finished the zine with some students in the last Youth Voices Lead, and they came up with this beautiful zine. I was explaining to someone, like, it's also just the resurgence of them has been amazing, and it's been an international thing too. Like I was with Amy and Joseph Santos Lyons a while ago in the Philippines, and met with some youth leaders there, and they're like, oh yeah, we have this is one zine too. They have all these amazing zines. So I just wanted to acknowledge I don't know why 100% it's resurfacing. I'd have to do research, and maybe somebody knows, but it's very cool to see it across the globe.
Yes. Yeah. It felt like a throwback for me. We actually at Grow Grounded and Resilient Organizing Workshop, which is the young adult justice program that we put on, that the UA puts on. We went to a zine making, or we went to a I'm going to get this wrong. People who are actually there are going to be like, Shannon, why can't you remember? But there's a certain kind of printer that they use, that has been used. And so we went to this really great workshop in Portland, Oregon, where they had a whole library of zines, but we also learned how to do these really great print art through print. And there's a certain name for this kind of printer. I can't remember what it is. It's like an old school kind of printer where it only prints with one color at a time, but you can layer it on top of it. It was so fantastic. I wish I could remember the name of it. But it was a great workshop, and it was that perfect combination of art and, thank you, lithography. Yes, but there's a special name for the printer, I think. Could be wrong.
We'll investigate.
Yes, more information later. Yes, but it was one of my favorite things about the Grow gathering that happened before General Assembly this past year. I always liked it. General Assembly is our the Unitarian Universalist business meeting of the year. So it happens all over the country. For those of you who are not in the know with all the terms that we use, I always like to try to explain them, but I'm sure I throw out a lot of things that not everybody understands. You mentioned Joseph. Joseph is a long time supporter of youth and young adults in Unitarian Universalism, and so I feel like I, in some ways, working at the UUA, have inherited some of the work that Joseph has not inherited the work, but inherited the what do I want to say? Inherited the what's come of his work, if that makes sense. The people that Joseph connected to in his time working with youth and young adults at the UUA. And Marissa, did you also work with?
I did. I worked at the youth office in 2005.
Yeah, that's what I thought. Okay. So you were in Boston.
I was in Boston. I spent time in Boston.
Yeah, I know. We all have. Have some more than others, but yeah. All right. Well, and I think that just proves that, not proves, but that just shows how involved you've been with youth and young adults, and supporting people out there who have things to say, have things to share and express and to say. And I appreciate you and all the work that you've done.
Thank you. The same. Thank you. Yeah. Thanks for having me. Thanks for being, I don't often get a chance to reflect sometimes. so it's beautiful to reflect on someone who also cares about art and communities, and so I really appreciate it. Thank you.
And definitely you should come back. You should come back when Bliss is here too, and you should bring with you some of the people who are maybe the people who of your newest group of Youth Voices Lead. And you said so I just want to also give that plug one more time. You are still taking applications?
Yeah, we definitely are. So you can go to our website, artejustice.org, and then artejustice.org/Youth Voices Lead.
Okay, but go to the website regardless. Because like I said, it's a great website. It's very informational. You can actually see a lot of your your campaigns or your projects that you've worked on. You can click on the links to those and kind of see what you've been up to. I love it. It's wonderful.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Take care. And for everyone else, we are going to wrap up this episode. We usually end our episodes, Marissa, with a whoosh. So the whoosh is this, we did our breathing in the beginning, and we always do a big out breath at the end, just signifying that we are done, we are finished, and we're just moving it through our body like it's all out there, right? And so we usually do it together. And so a whoosh, it starts really high up here like this, and then we just push it out in a big whoosh. And we are done. Thank you.